Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
President Mr. Kashner.
Here.
Vice President Mr. Persing.
Here.
Secretary Mr. Anderson.
Here.
Treasurer Mr. Griffiths.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Krieger.
Here.
Mrs. Miller.
Here.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Here.
Mr. Shuey.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Recognize student accomplishments.
Okay, Mr. Hockenbrock and Mrs. Neary could not be here tonight, so we will get students on for next month or at the beginning of the next school year, with it being the last month of school.
Okay. Okay, moving on, citizens' comments. Yep, identify yourself and a street address, please.
Okay. My name's Kimberly Rebuck, 4220 of Upper Road. Tonight I speak on behalf of my fellow bus drivers. We come here because our number one goal as drivers is safety. We need your help to assure that this goal is met. Increase in behavioral issues are happening in and out of the school building. 20-some students to one teacher can be quite challenging, yet they have backup from others around and security if need be. Now, one bus driver with up to 72 students and a road full of vehicles, stoplights, stop signs, train tracks, and pedestrians ahead of us. We take this load on alone. We have to manage behaviors, breaking up fights, physical and emotional needs, messes that occur, upset parents, etc., all while keeping our eyes on the road to make sure we are getting these children to their proper locations safely. Adding aides onto buses in need can reduce write-ups, parents calling in, students fighting, and stop continuous distractive behavior such as children standing while the bus is moving or crawling over and under the seats. It's also going to help from losing more drivers. The need is already great. I'm sure the incentive to get aides on the bus, whether new hires or already employed, would be far less than turning to the extent other school districts have had to, by paying parents to take their own children due to not having enough transportation. We're here because we want to do our job and do it right. Help us help you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other citizens' comments?
Robert Boyce, concerned citizen, address P.O. Box 533. I just have a quick question about contracted services through SPEAR, your virtual program. When you cut a check for those contractor services, do you cut the check after they perform the services or do you cut it before? So when exactly do you pay the contracted? For example, one of my sons is taking German. There's other things that are not offered through the local curriculum and they're contracted out to some other organization. So I was just curious, when are they paid? Because if there are issues, do you withhold payment? That's one of my concerns.
We don't, I don't have the answer for you off the top of my head on that. We could check with the business office. Do you have the answer?
Typically after services.
After services.
After services are performed satisfactorily? Okay, great. That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other citizens' comments? Name and address.
Michelle McCrary, South Franklin Street, Shamokin. And I'm here, I was asked to be here for the drivers, and I want to make it clear before I start speaking that I'm stuck in the middle. I just want everyone to know I'm not complaining. I see the need for the aides on the bus because I am one, and I ride the bus, and I want this on public record that the kids, to their parents, are out of control. Your kids are out of control, and the bus, everything that she said, that she just said up here is true. So I don't know. My bus is better now. My bus is great. But I see Mr. Zimmerman trying to control the kids on the bus. I see bus drivers throwing their hands up and leaving the bus because they no longer want to drive it. So I don't know what the answer is. I just wanted to get up here and speak and say, back them up that there is the need and put it out there for whoever needs to hear it, that there is a need for more drivers. I don't know if there are not drivers, aides. I don't know who's applying, not applying, but
They're not applying, so if
They're
you
not
have
applying.
friends, tell them.
I am. Every time someone complains to me, I just send them a link. Here you go, apply for.
We put it out there, we put an aid on every bus. We
Right,
put
and
it out
I know
there.
that. That's why I
You
said-
were the only one that applied and somebody else that wasn't, we didn't feel was qualified.
Right, and that's why I said I'm not complaining at you. I just wanted to speak so that somewhere it gets out into the
You can't hire
public
them if
that,
they don't apply and don't want the
Right.
job, like,
right.
what are we supposed to do?
So is it still listed? Is the job still listed?
Believe so.
I think it is,
So,
yes.
just to follow up, number one, you do an awesome job.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've told you that before. She really
I
does.
appreciate that.
Awesome, and I think everybody here would attest to that. We recognize the hard job that you have, believe me. I always joke that when my kids were little, I had a hard time with two of my own children in the back of my vehicle while I drove, let alone trying to drive 40, 50 of not your own children, and it's a much bigger vehicle, obviously. So I don't think anybody would disagree that we would not want to do the job that you do. You have a very difficult job without behaviors on the bus. We did meet with Klingers last week or the week before. We had these conversations, and we've met with bus drivers before. There's a standing invitation, Friday mornings, 9 a.m. We have an admin meeting right here. We had a representative, she's not here tonight, I don't think, but it's kind of designated. If you want to designate someone, come out and talk and try to problem solve together like we did a year ago, we can continue to do that. But I've been very transparent with Klingers and some of the drivers. Come Fridays, 9 a.m., we'll talk about things, we'll come up with solutions together. So you're more than welcome to be here. I always told Don Carsto, text me or call me. Sometimes we cancel the meeting on a Friday every once in a while so you don't show up here, but we'd be more than happy to entertain your concerns like we did last week with Klingers. Yes.
I took over for Dawn, so if I
Okay.
can get your information, that would be great.
Absolutely. All right.
I just want to add, for the record, when you're looking at this job, you're literally on the bus with the kids, maybe 15 minutes tops. So when you're putting an invitation out for people to apply, you're on the bus with the kids for 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon. Everything else is travel time. It is not like, you know what I mean? Sit down, be quiet, keep your feet in a seat, and everybody would be happier. So I hope somebody applies, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm trying.
Are there other citizens' comments?
Hello, Harold Boyce, same P.O. box as that guy over there. He's my dad. I just have a quick question. Is it possible for a student's right to use a bus to be denied? Or is it required?
Not to get into a dissertation on school law, but students could be denied a right to ride the bus based on behaviors as seen by the principal's discretion. Also, transportation is not a right. It is not requirement for districts statewide to provide busing to students.
Okay. That's all.
Thank you.
Are there other comments? Name and address.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Brandy Finney. I live up on Dewar Street here in Shamokin. I've been driving bus for 5 years. And I just want to kind of add to their little repertoire that I get where you guys are coming from. I know you guys are trying to hire. I just started as a teacher's aide at the school, and let me tell you, I've learned a ton. But anyway, we've noticed that with our write-ups that a lot of it's just conference with student, conference with student, conference with student. Every write-up that I've ever personally gotten back, and I know I've seen a couple other drivers, it's always a conference with a student. They don't learn from a conference, unfortunately. They learn from discipline. And maybe we could look into more heightened discipline when it comes to, especially the frequent flyers, I call them, of, misbehaving on the bus. My bus, I usually have a great bus. I've been driving 5 years. I've had barely any problems. This year, I was ready to quit. I'm not going to lie. And I love driving my bus. I love every one of my kids. This will be the first year that they don't get a reward at the end of the year for good behavior. And I've been driving bus since my daughter was 2 in different districts. So it's been 15, 16, 17 years now. This is the first year that I will not be buying treats for my children at the end of the year. That's how bad they were. And I'm a pretty lenient bus driver when it comes to stuff. As long as you sit, keep your hands in the window, stay out of my aisle, and don't eat on my bus, no cussing and swearing and fighting, that kind of thing, I'm cool. And they're on my bus 10 minutes. So I just wanted to kind of back them up and let you guys know that discipline needs to be more than just a conference.
And that would be what the conversations on Friday mornings would be.
Well, I just wanted to throw it out there.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there other citizens' comments? Okay, moving on, work session. Okay.
My name's Jamie Sigger. I live at 2236 Upper Road, and Michelle's actually the aide on my bus. I had drove her bus for several weeks without an aide, and then I like what you guys had said. You definitely see that you need an aide, and I had drove the bus without an aide. It was you couldn't control them. And I lived in Shamokin pretty much my whole life. A lot of familiar faces I see in here. You definitely see the Shamokin changing now, not for the better, but definitely for, I'd say, the moving in for the worse. And it's hard for you guys and for us guys to drive bus and to control them. And I wouldn't want your position whatsoever, but it's definitely hard to control them. And having an aide definitely, absolutely made a huge difference. And we were just talking outside, me and Michelle. I couldn't make it this afternoon, the drive, and she said having a different driver and a different aide, like you have to know how to work together at keeping the kids calm, and it kind of de-escalating how they are a little bit. And it definitely works together, having an aide to help. It's so much different not having one. You almost feel like sometimes your hands are tied. And I like what you guys definitely said, that you're working towards getting somebody. I don't know if more money will help or what, or I have no idea. But it's definitely something, like you said, that you're going to have to work together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other citizens' comments? Okay, moving on, work session. Change that.
We'll change it later. Okay. I just skipped the discipline. Okay, sure. Just a couple things. I do want to commend the group. I don't know all the folks' names, but I know Matt Tahansky was one in particular that spearheaded the cleanup and a lot of the work that was done this past weekend on the nature trail. And I believe there's an article in the local newspaper. I want to thank everyone who was part of that group and the other individuals that have reached out about continuing to do some work and activities that we can get some of our students involved with the things in the nature trail that need attention. So thank you. Also, just an update on discipline numbers. In the elementary school, biggest issues we've had, obviously, are student behaviors and bus conducts, which is a work in progress. We have noticed a significant improvement in bus conducts with a monitor on the bus. Thank you, Michelle. And our dress code is definitely, write-ups have improved. In the middle high school, again, student behaviors and class cuts. We've had, obviously, improvement with dress code violations. Some of that had to do with some of the changes that we've made with the dress code a few months ago, and we've seen a decrease in the number of students found vaping. So that's a positive too, obviously, for health reasons. So those are our biggest issues on the discipline front and the areas that we've seen significant improvements. So hopefully we could keep working towards more improvements. That's all I got.
Thank you. Moving on, old business. May I have a motion to approve item 5.01?
Motion.
Karen?
Wait.
Presentation.
Oh, what?
Budget presentation. Budget presentation.
Budget presentation.
Oh.
We're gonna shoot up on it. I think you'd be okay, just back up a little, Mr. Cook.
You think?
I think so, yeah. I think it's gonna be above you. Yeah.
Where?
It's still booting up. We're getting there. Okay, welcome everyone. The school board directors and myself and Mr. Vanna and all our admin and our teachers. This process has been going on since before Christmas break. We were submitting requisitions and developing our budget from the whole timeline. So we're ready for our 2024-2025 tentative proposed budget. First, as we go into, oops, went a little too fast. We're going to take a look at some of the revenues in the past 7 years and how we have been funded. Local is the blue, our state is the orange, and our federal is the gray. As you can see, this goes back to 16-17, and it's the actual revenue which we have right now on record from 22-23. Our local had a little dip there, but then an increase. Our state, we're finally getting a little bit more subsidies from the state. And you'll notice towards the end there, 21-22, 22-23, we had a substantial increase in federal. Please keep in mind, that is due to the grant money from ESSER due to COVID-19. That money is going away in a few months. So that federal is going to start coming back down if you have our chart for the next 2 years. That's the actual hard data with the numbers that create this chart. I will have this presentation available on our website so you can actually see the numbers that are generating each of these barcodes. Okay, we have debt. Our debt has increased in the past couple of years because, as you know, we did do another ESCO project 2 years ago, so that increased our bonds and other debt. Our fees, internet, and dues, we're staying about pretty much even as we go. The top green is the 22-23, so the top is 22-23, and the bottom bar, the dark blue, is the 17-18, so that you have a better reference. Our equipment, last year, that bar green shut out because we had the ESCO project. We did 8 air handling units, different equipment from the ESCO project, so those were pieces of equipment. And remember, that whole entire ESCO project was over $9 million, so that's why that bar is shooting out there because of the equipment. Supplies, as you can see through the years, pretty much steady, not major changes. A lot of the changes probably were due to price increases in the market. Purchase services, we get into here, tuition. We have cyber cost tuition increased. So that was probably about $2.7 million for outside cyber schools that our district had to pay. Also, we saw an increase in special education services to outside agencies to provide the correct services our students needed. The next bar down is property service. Property service, that has a larger green bar because that was part of the ESCO project for the repairs and the fixes that was done with the ESCO project. Professional services, we do have a little bit increase there from 22-23 because we are still searching for a school psychologist. So, of course, the cost to go out and purchase those services is costing us more than if we had an in-house psychologist. And then the benefits and the salaries, basically their increase is due to your annual increases. In 22-23, I believe the increase for insurance was, no, 23-24, the increase for insurance went up 9.5%. We're projecting a 7.5% for next school year. A lot of the increase in the salaries and benefits is because of the ARP ESSER money. We added the after-school programs and the Indian camps, so we have more positions that were being filled due to those funds. When you look at the expenditures and the revenue. So if we go back to 18-19, we had a deficit, so we had to use the general fund balance to balance the two items. Our revenue was less than our expenditures. So that came down to $2.2 million. Then in 1920, we had the same situation where the revenues was less than our expenditures, so we had to use our general fund balance. So we had to decrease to 2.1. Then in 2021, we had a little increase because we were able to use a lot of the ESSER money to supplement some of those items in our budget. So it took us up to 2.2. And then at the start of 21-22, we had a decrease to balance the budget. 22-23, again, we had a slight increase, also due to our federal grant money. And start of the 23-24 year, you see it was just a slight increase, a few $1,000s there, which took us to a $2,477,987 going into the school year. So where does that take us for next year? So our expenditures, we still have some ARP ESSER money that we're going to be using for our summer programs. Pretty much our expenditures for our ARP ESSER COVID money is all going to be expended by the end of September. Our other big one is our cyber charter tuition. Last year, our cyber charter tuition came in at like $2.7 million. That is a lot of money that comes right off the top of all our revenue to go out the door. Our underfunded special education costs, as I said earlier, we have a high need. Our population is about 24% special ed, and sometimes in-house, we do not have the correct programs, so we have to send them outside to other agencies, and there's a cost with that. Our annual payroll and benefit increases, again, as I just said, the healthcare is about 7.5% increase, which is lower than the previous year. Our QZAB and ESCO bonds, that's our debt. And then always, our infrastructure and grounds, our school's getting old, and we constantly have some minor issues, like we're looking at maybe replacing a roof in the next upcoming months. Here's our charter cyber tuition cost since 2012-13. So you can see the blue boxes on the left that go all the way to 22-23. So combined already, we've spent almost $19 million in total since 12-13. And you can see those boxes are getting bigger, which means more money's coming out of our fund balance to support these costs. Our special ed, here's some just history on special education costs. As you can see, our population, I said, is about 24% now. And unfortunately, special ed is mandated by the federal government, but we do not get $1 out and $1 in. So that's why we say it's underfunded. In 22-23, for that $7.2 million, we were funded by $2.7 million. So you can see that deficit, about 62%, we had to use funds from the district to offset that cost. And our 24-25 budget, we're looking at an increase to about almost $7.5 million. Oops. There we go. Okay, another cost is in our benefits. We have the Pennsylvania State Education Retirement System. At one time, that retirement rate prior to the 22-23 going to 23-24 year, it was projected to be almost 40%. However, the state did come in and did amend it. So as you can see, in 22-23 it was at 35, it went to 34 and 33.99, it's about 34%. What does that mean? That means for every dollar salary, we contribute 34 cents towards the retirement system of that employee. However, the state does subsidize us, so we get more than half of that back. Oh, sorry about that, I had that on the arrow. So this chart will be available also on, the PowerPoint. Just to give you an idea of our differences for our different categories. Our budgetary reserve, we did increase it by like $867,000 because right now we have a track that we're putting in, but we are hoping for some more donations to offset that. But if we don't get the donations, we're still responsible for that cost, so we have that in the budgetary reserve. And we also, our capital reserve is low, and we know we have a lot of fixes coming up in the coming years, so the board built in another $500,000 that we can transfer. Our salaries, a slight increase due to the increases in our contracts. Benefits, you'll see there's an increase there. Professional services increase, as I said earlier, is pretty much due to a lot of special education needs. Our property services fixes around the district. Tuition transportation, we increased that because last year, I believe in the 23-24 budget, we only had like 2.2 million budgeted for outside cyber, so we decided to put that difference in up to the 2.7. So that's almost your $500,000 difference. General supplies, again, about just a little increase. Our teachers, our staff, there's really no frills on the general supplies. It's basically what we need. Equipment, that you're looking at some technology in there. Dues and fees and other financing has to do with a lot of the bonding, the bonds. So we're looking at a total expenditure of almost $41 million, $40,903,862.90. So when we look at these with another chart, comparing, you can see there really hasn't been too much growth. The blue would be the current school year 23-24 budget to what we're proposing for next year. So you can see there's not much growth on those bars. And how are we going to fund it? Locally, we are anticipating $8.4 million, which is about 22% of the revenue collected. State and federal, state is going to fund about 71%. Federal is going to fund about 4%. We are anticipating the general fund balance to be about $1 million, so we would have 38.7 of the $41 million. So of course we're going in again with another deficit year. On this budget, we are proposing a millage hike for our real estate. Our county assessment is at $118 million plus, so that means one gross mill. For every mill on the real estate, we only collect $118,794. However, we do not have a 100% collection rate. So we get about a little over $100,000 for every mill. So there's some millage history. In 2022 and 2023, we did not increase it. We're looking for 2024. We're taking it up to 41.1, which is our Act 1 index. And a lot of people like to know, well, what does that mean on my real estate bill? So for every assessed value of $10,000, for the 2024, it'd be $411.10. On our homestead and farmstead, the median property that qualified was assessed at $8,054. So yes, we're going in once again with a non-balanced budget. As in past years, we are in communication with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. We do share our cash flow reports with them. We've had in the past had a request advance to our basic education funding. So we are on their radar of a high need financially for the district. What we're going to do next is we do put the proposed budget on display for 30 days for the general public. We'll have it on the web page, and for those who do not have access to the internet, we will have a hard copy available for your review here at the business office. Final adoption has to be at least 30 days after this meeting posting, which we anticipate to be Thursday, June 20th?
Thursday, June 20th.
June 20th. And then, of course, with any additional funding, lack of, the school board always has the authorization to reopen the budget throughout the school year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Frank.
Okay, now we can move on to old business. Motion to approve item 5.01.
Motion.
Second.
On the question. As many of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. We have a motion to accept item 5.02.
Motion. Second.
On the question. As many of those who are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on, motion to approve item 5.03.
Motion. Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Moving on to new business, may I have a motion to approve item 6.01?
Motion.
Second.
On the question? As many of those are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Motion to adopt the 2024-2025 tentative general fund budget.
Motion. Second.
On the question? I think it's a roll call, right?
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Kashner.
Yes. We have a motion to approve item 6.03.
Motion.
Second. On the question? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Kashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
My motion to, item 6.04, to elect Ed Griffiths.
Motion.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Stay.
Mr. Kashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
We have a motion to approve item 6.05.
Motion.
Second?
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Kashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
We have a motion to approve item 6.06.
Motion.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Kashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve item 6.07?
Motion.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Kashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Motion to approve item 6.08.
Motion.
Second?
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Kashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
We have a motion to approve item 6.09.
Motion?
Second.
On the question?
What was the price? How much is the increase? Anybody know?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
Yeah, I reached out to Mr. James and Mr. Callahan, and they said there was no problem with that in the email. It's probably at least $1, because it was way low.
It's $2.85.
$2.85 was before.
Oh, Sherry.
Yeah, she's right here. There, she's back there, yeah. So 95 cents.
I heard ya.
I have
Yes.
a A motion and a second. Any other on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Cashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes. A motion, item 6.01, may I have a motion to approve contracts agreements for student services?
Motion. Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Cashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller. Yes. Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Motion to approve item 6.11.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Cashner.
Yes. We have a motion to approve item 6.12.
Motion?
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Cashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
We have a motion to approve item 6.13.
Motion.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Cashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
We have a motion to approve item 6.14.
Motion.
Second. On the question? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Cashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
We have a motion to approve item 6.15.
Motion. Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Cashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
We have a motion to disapprove item 6.16.
Motion.
Second.
On the question?
This is the one that was a duplicate before,
Correct.
and,
It was on twice.
correct.
This is the one that was wrong. So
Okay.
there were two reasons,
Okay,
and this is the reason that was wrong.
okay.
Any other on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Cashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
A motion to approve veterans exemption request in item 6.17.
Motion. Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Cashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Persing.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Shuey.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
May I have a motion to approve or adopt item 6.18.
Motion. Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Griffiths.
Yes.
Mr. Cashner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller. Yes. Mr. Persing?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Shuey?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. A motion to adopt item 6.19
Motion. Second.
on the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kashner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Persing?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Shuey?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to personnel. May I have a motion to approve? I'm sorry, you have a change?
Yeah, item 7.18, the effective date should be from June 3rd, 2024 to August 16th, 2024.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve all personnel items and motions 7.01 through 7.18 as amended?
Motion. Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Persing?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Shuey?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths?
Yes.
Mr. Kashner?
Yes. Okay, board member reports. Anybody have anything?
I'd just also like to thank Matt Tahansky and all the donors and volunteers for the work on the nature trail. It's a great effort, and we really appreciate it.
I think more to come. Another effort to come after this one.
Okay, I would like to thank Karen and the staff and all the departments that chipped into preparing the budget. It's a major project, and I think she did a really good job with it. And I appreciate the department heads trying to pinch the penny as best they could. We reviewed the budget pretty much, maybe not line item by line item, but we looked at every category. And I just wanted to say that our budget isn't our problem right now. It's not our budget. We're pretty much as tight as we can get, But obviously, as Karen mentioned, the problem is the revenues. The revenues, expenditures, you got inflation, you got, the salaries going up. You have to stay competitive with other school districts. You got benefits, you have to stay competitive. Some of those things you just can't control as well. And then you have the pension problem, which we don't have a control over either. But the one thing, and we don't have any control over our funding that we get from the charter schools. Okay, so that is a major problem, and they're fighting that out in Harrisburg. I guess there's some progress made, possibly, but we're going, full speed ahead on our spare, and I think that saved us a pretty good amount of money so far. So there's high hopes for that. And I also want to bring up special ed cost. I mean, we're 24% special education enrollment. That's, I guess that's considered high. But we don't get the funding to match those increases. So there's definitely an issue with special ed funding. There's obviously an issue with charter school funding, and the charter schools are not restricted like we are to accumulating fund balances. We can't. We are restricted to what we can do. And charter schools are not. And they have some pretty substantial balances. So if any of these taxpayers want to take issue, and, that's what they should take issue with. That's where the problems are. And hopefully we'll see some work done in that matter from the state side of things.
The vouchers and scholarships that they're proposing down in Harrisburg is just blowing smoke.
Right.
It doesn't help us at all.
Right.
So if everybody's upset with the budget, which everybody in this board pretty much is, that our hands are tied.
Right.
Right on Independence Street, it's in walking distance, is your state representative, Mrs. Stair. Stop in and see her.
Right.
Put the pressure on her that maybe she'll do something.
Right.
So she's right there on Independence Street. Stop in.
Right. I agree. That's what you gotta do. It makes a difference.
Maybe they'll go back to where they're supposed to go and represent the people
Right.
instead of
Right, representing their party,
Exactly.
you know,
And their interests.
in their interest, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
So,
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to end on a positive note. I've worked with the PTA a lot going to meetings and seeing the amount of work they're doing. Our PTA is vastly understaffed. Like, the number of people that go to the meetings is way lower than it should be. And please don't forget about the PTA, the amount of work they do. The kids go to Carnival, any of those extra events, your book programs, you know, that's all done by the PTA. And we need more volunteers coming out and helping with the PTA so they can do more activities for our kids.
Anybody else? All right, moving on. The executive session was held on Wednesday, May 1st, 2024, from 5:30 PM to 8:32 PM. Tuesday, May 14th, 2024, from 6 PM to 8 PM. And Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, from 5:30 PM to 7:24 PM, prior to the regular monthly board meeting, all for personnel issues.